Our next and final speaker for the morning is Mr. Jeremy Heigh. He's the principal economist of Sift Everything Corporation. Jeremy runs a corporation which is an economic analysis market intelligence company whom businesses and communities turn to when they need economic analysis, market intelligence, and strategic development advice. As a setup for this particular forum taking place, Jeremy contacted Colleen Sklar and I to get as much information as possible, and that means strategies that have been done on our communities, on transportation networks, on airport developments, on land developments and industrial. And we did a massive information dump to Jeremy and his organization. It was very interesting to speak with him this morning about how their organization was able to sift through, pardon the pun, but sift through all that information in terms of identifying where we have some good positioning in terms of identifying critical areas within our region, but also some gaps that we need to consider filling and how we best do that. So with that, would you please welcome Jeremy Heigh.
So what I'm going to try and talk about in my presentation, should take me 25 minutes maybe, is whether you're able to answer the kinds of questions that companies are asking Greg. And more than that, if you have the evidence you need to focus on a few things and defend those positions and drive them forward. So please recognize we haven't done any analytical work. We've gone through the information we were given and just tried to reconcile that with the way we do our work. And what I'm going to try and talk about today is how we go through the process of answering the kinds of questions Greg has asked, how we do that work and why we do it that way, what we've learned along the way as we've gone through that process in other places, what we found here when we looked at all the information we were given, and then what you might want to do next going forward from here. So I want to start by saying that I feel a bit conflicted as an economist. I use data as a bit of a security blanket. We position on clear evidence and not on opinion, and that usually keeps us out of trouble, and I try to stick with that. Here I feel like I've been invited to meddle in things that I haven't had the opportunity to really understand yet, because we haven't had that opportunity to do the analytical work we usually do. And I've learned that every time I come into a situation like this, or an opportunity to make choices like you have right now, and I act as though I know anything, I've already lost. So please accept that I'm incredibly naive. I know nearly nothing of the choices you have to make right now. I'm not in any position at all to suggest what you should do or choose. All I'm going to speak today about is our experience and the process of making choices like you need to make. So we have several tools, and their main purpose is all the same. It's to embrace chaos. In the kinds of choices we're talking about today, chaos reigns. There are so many things going in so many different directions. And our tools are built to walk into that and not twist it into anything other than what it really is. It's what is needed to make honest and responsible choices that we can be accountable for, that you can be accountable for. You need these tools because you need to consider all the elements of these choices, not just the ones you understand most or the ones that people are most interested in. And along the way, we've stumbled into 3 principles for embracing chaos. The first is simplify but never twist. Chaotic, as well as apparently chaotic systems, can often be simplified into a few driving elements, but they should never be twisted. They can't be twisted to fit preconceived strategies, or priorities. They can't be twisted to fit what have been decided as necessary outcomes. The second principle is that incentives trump reason. We've learned that logic and clear evidence is essential for setting the stage for decisions, but good decisions require incentives too. We learned that as children, sustaining even great decisions requires a prize. Ruth was offering chocolate bars. Same idea. And this carries forward into our adult lives. Without incentives, we rarely do the things we know are good for us. The third principle is that good fences make good neighbors. There are fences between all of us. There's fences between you and my company. That's how we get paid. There's fences between the various agencies that all of you represent and the various levels of government that are represented here. And most importantly, for this kind of conversation, given the work we've done and for similar purposes in other places, it's important to look at the fences that exist between municipal interests. For cooperation to work, there needs to be incentives that pass through those fences. And if you can't all share in the value that's going to be discussed at this table today, you're going to leave, and this is going to break. And if it's the offenses that keep you from sharing the value, that's where you need to concentrate right now. There's a proverb that says, good soup attracts chairs. Good soup attracts chairs. What we're talking about today in the context of regional economic development is about making a soup that all of us can share. And it's that soup that will pull our chairs together. And all good soup starts with what's in the fridge. Is it a healthy fridge? Is it partially full? Is it empty? That's part of the job we were asked to do here. And I'm going to talk about that in more detail in a second. But I think I should go through the process of how we get to finish the job that we're talking about starting right now. In our work, the ingredients that are in the fridge is the data that we would use to do our job. It's the data we need to find the few things that this place can do and to identify the many things that are going to distract you and you should never do. Once we've figured out what's in the fridge, then we need to review our recipes. And for us, that's the solution tools that we bring. The checklist that a naive economist like me needs to have to reassure me that I'm going to have something to cook with when I'm done. They remind us that if there's only a few things in the fridge, there's only a few things we can make. That sounds bad, but it's actually great. Keeps you from having to be everything to everybody. But if there's only lemons in the fridge, we can only make other versions of lemons. Once we've tallied up what's in the fridge, now we have to go grocery shopping. We need to make a list. This is the data we don't have. This is the data we need to get to finish our job. So that's the analysis we do, the interviews that I think need to be done, looking around the rest of the world to learn the lessons from other places. Finally, we go shopping. That's the work you would probably expect me to have done when I get up at this stage. We haven't done that work for this project. But once that work is done, finally, we're ready to make soup. It's the soup that's going to pull the chairs together, not our analytical work. Putting together all the ingredients is the work of balancing the meaning of the evidence we find, synthesizing it, figuring out how to translate it, how to turn it into something that people can use. But still, we're not done. We have to go back to the bottom of the recipe and remind ourselves that we're not done until this is rolled up neatly and it's served. Presentation matters a lot. How is this going to be eaten? There's going to be reports, it's going to be forums, summits, one-on-one meetings. Where's it going to be served? What's the venue? Context matters. A while ago, I decided I wanted to be interested in Scotch, mostly because I don't have the memory to deal in wine. So I was in London. There's a great Scotch retailer in the London airport. I had a huge layover. So I went in there and was visiting with the guy. There's floor-to-ceiling range of Scotch. It's a huge room. And so I thought I had a great question. I wanted to ask him, what's the best Scotch you've ever had? And he said, well, there was a day we were out fishing. We were on the ocean. A storm came up. The waves got big. We were cold. We saw this old stone cabin near the shore. We got out of our boats. We ran in there. We lit a fire. And we found this bottle of Scotch that didn't have a label on it. It's the best Scotch I've ever had. He's in a room full of Scotch, and his favorite is one he doesn't know the name of, because context matters. So if you're going to do this, pay attention to how you roll it out. While we're talking about Scotch, whiskey isn't Scotch, but I want to walk through our solution tools, the tools we use just a bit to compare what we found in the fridge, the ingredients, the data you've got, with the recipes we have. And I want to describe those tools a little bit because it might help you understand why it's useful to do that work. So we have 5 tools. The first is jurisdictional advantage assessment. It's basically a Myers-Briggs for places. It's trying to figure out what are the few things this place is going to be great at, what are the many things it should never try to do. The second tool is industrial ecosystem analysis. And this asks, what's the existing mix of companies? How many small, medium, and large companies are here? Within those sizes, what kinds of companies are playing? And what other dynamics are running around in that ecosystem that we need to understand? The third, and this is where Greg spent a bit of time, is around systemic competitiveness. What's the mix of policies, programs, and infrastructure? And how does that encourage or constrain economic opportunity? Because, at least when I was taught economics, we were taught that firms compete. Free markets are the way to go. But as we've done this work, I've started to realize systems compete a long time before companies ever get a chance. And it's often the system that's going to determine who wins and who loses. When Greg talks about how he picks a place, he's talking often about systems. Before he talks about what are companies doing there, he's talking about what does this place do and how competitive is it with other places we might put it. Fourth tool we have is absorptive competitive, or the absorptive capacity index. We're not really great at naming anything, but we just go for hard to say. In what ways has the regional industrial ecosystem succeeded at identifying, reaching out, acquiring, bringing back, adapting, adopting, and leveraging new technologies? Why does that matter? Because if I'm an investor and I want to make a decision, which sector do I spend money on to get the greatest result? And one has shown more historical capability to succeed in that than others, the likelihood of its success in the future is high. So in Saskatchewan, for example, agriculture is one of the strongest at achieving this. Mining, which they bank on pretty aggressively, is one of the weakest. It's an important question when you try and understand potential payoff for investments. The final one is resilience ranking. So that list of words that is on the screen before anybody speaks, that Wordle thing, it has a bunch of words related to the challenge of economic development. None of them are related to resilience. How prepared is this region or this place, both its companies and that system that I just talked about, for economic shock? Because man, is it ever coming right now. And how likely is this place to absorb and prosper in the face of that shock? And where has it created systemic redundancy and complementarity within that system? So those are our recipes. What's in your fridge? Like Greg said, we received an ocean of documents from Manitoba. We've got 106 economic reports and assessments and case studies and strategy documents. We've compared them to the 216 indicators we use to do our work, basically combed the data out of that, and compared it to the way we do our job. And based on that review, the fridge is half full or half empty, depending on the kind of person you are. And to try and represent that, and to get a chance to spend time with my 5-year-old daughter, and because I couldn't figure out how to do this in software, what we've done is built a pie chart, and my little 5-year-old girl helped me color it. And what's on this pie chart is the indicators we use. And so you can see the big ones are interviews and global scans, supply chain work. Ruth was talking about that a bit. Investments, educations, and firm-level data. There's also, and this is what Ruth's work covered aggressively, wages, demographic, employment data, but it also includes productivity, research and development investment, exports, as well as capital assets. So you can see there's a pretty strong relationship between what Greg has talked about and what our indicators are for. Then we erased all the data we didn't find here. And to be really dramatic, we colored it blood red or pink. My little girl says this is pink. And she thinks it's way more appropriate, and she has a bet that I wouldn't use pink in a presentation in front of other people, because men don't use pink. But that's a bit exaggerated. The red is the data we didn't find in the work we did. The yellow is the data that we found in reports, but we'd argue that it's a little bit stale, and if you're going to do the work, you'd want to refresh it. Green is good to go. So it's about half that we would want to go shopping for. It's about 26 that you'd probably want to replace. If you were going to make smoothies, maybe it would work. But if you want to make really great decisions, you'd probably want to go get the good stuff. And then 23 is good. So thank you, Sarah. So the second question we were asked to talk about is the lessons we've learned by doing this work in other places. We've done it in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario. We just finished a big job for the Capital Region Board around Edmonton. The first is that fingerprints matter. We do a lot of executive interviews. I've done over 1,000. The little bio, I put that in maybe 9 months ago. We do a lot of interviews, CEOs and vice presidents. And we ask them all the same questions. What are your priorities and what evidence do you have to back that up, to convince yourself it's a good idea? What are the barriers between where you are today and where those priorities would put you? How do you see the future evolving? What's on the horizon that people aren't talking enough about yet? We've done over 1,000 of those. We do them for 2 reasons. We want to understand what's important to companies. But more importantly, we want their fingerprints on what we do. Because when executives see themselves in the kind of work we do, they become champions for it. If we can get their fingerprints on the report before we publish it, it's pretty much pre-sold before it gets out. The second is that evidence leads to decisions. Without clear evidence, these kinds of discussions boil down to opinion and rhetoric. But rhetoric runs you in circles. And it's dangerous because it can stagnate a conversation like this, and decisions just kind of stall. Or worse, it can shatter any opportunity to attain something substantive. And so in this kind of work, I've seen the person who has my job as being a little bit like the sheriff on the edge of an old western town. So you got all the big gun guys coming into town, they got their big opinions, and they got the rhetoric they want to come with, and they got their huge egos. And I get out there with all the data and I say, look, you're going to have to leave those behind. In here, we're only going to talk about the real stuff. And what you get from data is control, and otherwise it's hard for rhetoric, or that makes it hard for rhetoric to get loose. And what we're really aiming for when we do this kind of work is to create consilience among these players, a jumping together of all these separated interests. That's what making soup is all about. Lesson 3, governments love business, but their business is systems. I used to work for the government. A lot of our clients are in the government. They're deeply fascinated with what's going on in companies, at the cost of not understanding what's fascinating about their jobs. Governments and the people that represent governments have an incredible level of power, and their role is really dynamic in the designing of these systems. They decide a major part of corporate options. When we talk to those 1,000 executives, I ask them, if I give you a page, you just have one blank page, what data do you need on that before you can make an investment? What indicators, what information do you have to see before you can be confident enough to make this choice? And a third of that information is a number that's controlled by government. That's not understood. It's incredibly important. And it's a reason why a lot of places are struggling. Firms operate at a cellular level. They're often very isolated. When I talk to executives, they usually don't understand a lot about what's going on around them. They understand what's going on in their industry, but not about the community that they're part of. The community that they're part of is the industrial ecosystem in this framework that we're using. That's interesting. That's what government's super interested in. This is government's job. This is where all the dynamic, interesting, systemic, big macro stuff is happening. That's the role of government. So, if we're going to go shopping and we're going to make soup, this is what I think you need from an economist, a guy that does this work's perspective. Whoops. Oh, yeah, that's where I want to be. So, looking at the data we were given, I'd flesh out the industrial ecosystem work. So we did find good case studies. We found some firm-level data, but there isn't a lot of it. There isn't enough of it. And most of what we see isn't very recent. So in this, what we would want is one-on-one interviews with key executives across all sectors of your economy. Firm-level data on all kinds and all sizes of companies. Data on acquisitions and investment. And information on technology adoption and on key markets. I'd say you need that kind of information. The second, on systemic competitiveness, this role of government that I've been talking about. For all the reasons that I just walked through, I think we would want clear evidence on the policies, programs, and infrastructure that encourage growth, constrain opportunities, and define how this all fits together with the priorities of the region. The reason why this is important is because often we'll see policies at a government level, and that can be federal, provincial, or municipal. This is the intended outcome, the stated outcome. The programs underneath it conflict with that policy, or they lead and incentivize to some other place. There's a break in there that isn't understood until you go looking for the evidence to sort it out. The third is the global scanning work that we do. We didn't find a lot of evidence or a lot of work around outside examples. We found work on comparing like Centerpoint to some other transportation hub in another place. But we didn't find a lot of work around places that are similar to us. What have they done? Or places that struggle with the same things. What have they done? Or places that look like us, have a similar population, innovative capacity. What have they done? And not to copy them. That's not why we do this work. But to bring back the lessons that they've learned by making mistakes or being successful. And more importantly, to prove that there's a tangible result at the end of action. This table that we're all sitting at is going to be about coming to a few positions. And the struggle is going to be there's enormous risk related to that, or there's things that I thought we needed that aren't going to be on this table anymore. What are we going to get at the end of that? The global scanning work is an amazing tool for creating clarity around that, for inspiring the people that are afraid to take the kind of risk that they need to take. So, say you've decided you want to make some soup. What do you need to know going ahead from here? First, decide who you're going to make this for. Is it for executives? Is it for government politicians? Is it for economic developers? You need to pick. Each one is going to want a different soup. So be careful on how you make this choice. And my advice, after making a lot of mistakes in this, is only agree to serve one. If you try for more than one, it's going to be horrible. Second is who's going to make the soup. So when we're working, we're making the soup. And the choice of who you use is not actually very obvious. So of course you want them to be rigorous and precise and data-driven, but you also want them to be unbiased and unpolitical and perceived as being both. The perception matters as much as the reality. They need to be credible. They have to be able to speak with executives and gain their trust. And they need to stand up in those boardrooms for what they find and the ways in which they find it. And they need to be absolute bulldogs for the truth. They need to fight everyone else, and they need to fight themselves to keep their opinions out of it. For this to work, it has to be clean. The second choice you're going to have to make is who serves the soup. And that's maybe even more important than who does the cooking. If we're doing the work, who's our client? Who hosts this opportunity? Whoever it is needs to understand what good service is about. They have to be proactive and flexible and efficient. And they need to be attentive in a childlike way, with some awe, some naivety, not attentive like a fox. Everybody needs to know this hasn't been gamed, that the truth is all that matters. This gives the right people the opportunity to be openly political. It gives the right people to be openly interested in profit. But if the host is messed up, the rest of it's wrecked. Whoever it is, they need to be content and delighted by taking a back seat role. This is not about the client. It's about the fighters. It's about the people who are going to change the economy, who have that leading, productive role. So that's from an economist perspective. If I changed seats and became the decision maker, what would I want? Because I would recognize as a decision maker, I can't have perfect information all the time. I'd say the data that's available to a choice if you tried to make it today is tolerable. You're not blind, but it's super fuzzy. If it were me in that seat, I would definitely want to understand what companies are doing. What do they have an appetite for? Where are they ready to take risk? Where are they leaning into uncertainty? I'd for sure want to understand systemic competitiveness. If we make a bet going this way, is there something in this system that's going to block it or make it deeply inefficient. And if I was going to do that already, I'd go and get the global scan work, because it's not a lot of extra effort, but it creates that ability to sell the vision at the back end. Given how crazy the world is right now, and from a distance, I don't live here, but it looks pretty crazy right here, I would want, or I'd recognize that I'm going to have to take some pretty extreme risk on the people side. And I don't have to take nearly any on the data side or the evidence side. I would want to get rid of the risk on the evidence side and leave the only risk in front of me on the people side. But that's just me. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think that's what happens next, yeah? If I can't answer them, I'll try and answer them by email or some other way.